and welcome to my first interview with writer T. Krulos that I met last week for the first time in person, and he actually gave me a short interview on his podcast, T's Weird Week. But after meeting him, and I just read his book, American Madness, and oh my Jesus, it is so wild. I couldn't believe it. It talks about conspiracy theories, and particularly a story about one man. If you want to tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, sure. So American Madness, I actually started working on that book in 2010, and it was because I was contacted by this man named Richard McCaslin. And at that time I was working on a different book that was about real-life superheroes, which is this interesting movement of people that adopt their own superhero personas.
Okay, and you were also, I'm sorry to jump around, but we're at this park in Milwaukee, and this is where you met your first superhero, right?
Right. When I first started working on this book, I just read this short news blurb, and I was like, I wonder if there's any of these real-life superheroes in Milwaukee, because I'd love to write a magazine article about them.
Right.
So I Googled, and I found a guy in the Milwaukee area named the Watchmen, is what he called himself.
Okay, not very original, but...
And I messaged him and said, I'm interested in this stuff. Why don't we meet up so you can tell me more about it? And he was like, all right, well, let's meet at this park at night,
Yeah.
So I was kind of walking around this park, and then all of a sudden I see this dude wearing his mask and his full-on, superhero outfit.
Okay.
And I just had this moment where I was like, wow, this guy is for real, and he's right here. But I had a really interesting conversation with him. We just kind of walked around this park that night, and he explained everything that he was about, and I was like, kind of hooked on the story.
Yeah. So that was like the beginning of what book was that for you?
Heroes in the Night, which was my first book. It was published in 2013.
Okay, so flash forward to his latest book, American Madness, and we're talking about Richard McCaslin.
AKA the Phantom Patriot.
The Phantom Patriot, yes. I am not very versed in conspiracy theories other than the stuff you hear on the media, like QAnon, and then all of the other stuff like UFOs, but this story, right away, it gets you sucked in. He gave me this book last week, and I was hell-bent on finishing it before I met with him again, and I just really, really wanted to know about where this was going, and just the story of this man, Richard, is just it's very intriguing, it's very intense. And T, when I messaged T, I was like, you are crazy. Because he met up with him several times, stayed with him, and the story went on, you said, over 10 years, or how long?
Yeah, almost. I first got in contact with him in 2010, and then I just kind of kept in touch with him. And I would work on a different project and kind of put this on the back burner, but then when I had time, I would work on it some more.
Right.
And, eventually I finished the book in 2019, and it was published last year.
Okay, perfect.
It's kind of a 10-year journey, yeah.
But, it starts off, I don't want to give away too much about this book, but it's the Bohemia Club, right? Or Bohemian.
The Bohemian Club is the organization, and they own a property called the Bohemian Grove.
Okay, so Richard raided this place, armed, raided this place.
Wearing his costume.
Yeah. And the story is really intense. There's a local bookshop in Denver called Mutiny, and I really, really, really want to get your books out there because I think they're just, the book that I've read so far is fascinating, and then you gave me another copy of one of your books that we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, if you want to share more about the American Madness, that's pretty intense.
It was very intense. Definitely the most intense experience I've had working on anything.
Just there's a part in the book where T is staying with Richard, and Richard's trying to film this superhero movie. Yeah. And T is not a stuntman, but he had him go in an ATV, and he was getting mad. He wanted you to drive it faster, and he hurts his leg. He could have broke his bone or something. just going off. You're in the desert in Nevada, in Pahrump?
Pahrump, Nevada. It's a weird little desert community. But so this happened in 2015, and at that time I was like, I would kind of like to wrap this book up.
Right.
So I messaged Richard and I was like, hey, I want to come down to Pahrump, see your environment that you're living in.
Compound?
Right. And
it was a superhero compound.
He built like his own like superhero headquarters in his home. And I was like, we can do whatever you want while I'm down there. I just want to like get an interview. And he was like, okay, here's what I want to do. I want to film this like superhero movie. And I was like, okay, I have no acting experience or anything like that. So I go down to Pahrump and we spend this really grueling like 2 or 3 days like filming this movie out in the desert all day.
Right.
And at one point he wanted me to do this stunt on an ATV, and I was like, I don't even drive a car, I haven't done any stunt work. But he was getting really impatient and frustrated, I think, because we were running out of daylight, and he wanted to get this movie done. And he wanted me to do this really fast drive down a hill. Yeah. And we did a couple takes, and he kept telling me to do it faster. And then that last take, I just hit this bump the wrong way, and the whole ATV like flipped over, and I flew out of it. And I actually like in a cartoon like saw stars when I hit my head on the ground and blacked out for a second.
It did not seem like
you gotta suffer for your art sometimes.
Yeah, that was definitely, but it's definitely worth checking out. And some more about Tea. So I just met him last week, and I did not realize that he also is, like, aside from being a journalist and a writer, he does some haunted tours around Milwaukee, and we did go to City Hall. And if you want to share some more about what you told me inside City Hall, but for people that don't know about Milwaukee City Hall, it's in this beautiful, like, late 1800s. I think it's like, what kind of architecture? It's like Flemish Revival or some kind of...
something like that.
And it was the tallest building in Milwaukee.
For a long time it was.
Okay.
I don't know how many stories it is exactly, but it's got to be at least 12.
Okay.
Say something like that.
It's tall.
Yeah, and I didn't really think much about it. I've been to City Hall several times, especially when I was bartending. I'd have to go in there to get my license. But I just found out about this a couple of years ago, which is, it's always great to find out some weird story about your home city that you never knew. In the 30s and 40s, or from the 20s until the late 30s, there was this wave of people who actually committed suicide by jumping from the upper floors of the building down to the lobby.
Is the lobby like marble, or is it just...
Yeah, it's a marble floor, and there's sort of it's designed so there's like this big open space in the middle of the building.
Yeah,
so,
if you are one of those cemetery photographers and you look up, I mean, it's definitely like a cool ceiling because you're kind of boxed in, but it's multi-level floors. So yeah, if you can imagine people launching themselves off.
Pretty much like 12 stories straight down onto a marble floor.
Yeah.
So it was this very shocking and gruesome problem that City Hall had for a number of years. What I think is really funny is they tried to think of different solutions to solve this problem, and some of them kind of made sense, and some of them, like one of their actual ideas was to crisscross the atrium with razor wire, so the people jumping would die such a gruesome death that it would deter people from doing that in the future.
So you did write an article in the American Ghost Walk website about this, and I did see a couple other articles that you sourced, and basically it was cost effective to put barbed wire. Like, that was a cheap solution to just put barbed wire, but that did not fly.
No.
Did they put nets?
Yes, what they ended up doing was they put in these chain link nets like every couple of floors, so if someone did jump, like the furthest they could go would be a couple of floors before they'd be caught in a net.
Yeah.
And those were actually in City Hall all the way up until the 1980s, when they finally decided that, hopefully this is a problem
of jumpers. Yeah, that was kind of wild. And then, what is the most gruesome, tragic story about a haunted place?
So, when I was working on my book, Monster Hunters, I met a local team here called the Paranormal Investigators of Milwaukee. I did some interesting things with them locally, but I also had the opportunity to go with them to Bobby Mackey's Music World, which is a haunted honky tonk in Kentucky.
Okay.
And there's a lot of lore about that place, including there's supposedly a portal to hell in the basement that's the former well.
Okay.
And the grounds used to be a slaughterhouse.
Okay.
So the story is that a couple of men killed a pregnant woman, cut off her head, and threw it into this well, which opened up a portal to hell.
Oh gosh.
And it's just notoriously haunted in a very frightening, like evil entity sort of way.
Okay, so aside from this gruesome decapitation of a pregnant woman, what do you know if there's any other incidences? Because sometimes like multiple things happen over years.
Yeah.
Do you know of any other?
Well, I mean, some of the haunting stories, Bobby Mackey, who's the owner of the building, apparently his wife was pushed down the stairs while she was pregnant by an unseen force.
Huh.
So, you know, supposedly the ghosts of these same guys that caused this murder. There's a kind of amusing story. One guy tried to sue Bobby Mackey's because he said that he was beat up by a ghost in the men's room.
Wow.
So he actually filed a lawsuit against the bar.
Wow.
Which led to them actually putting like a disclaimer sign on the outside of the bar that said that
anything that happens
right,
to
yeah,
you.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like completely open to these types of things, you know, as far as I mean, I'm not like going down a conspiracy rabbit hole type of thing, but as far as, you know, things that we don't know about, like I'm very open-minded, and I am very open-minded towards ghosts and also, you know, cryptozoology, and that's why I asked you about your book, Monster Hunters. So if we want to go ahead and finish by telling us a little bit more about this book, as much as you want to share.
Yeah. No, it was one of the greatest experiences I've had in my life. I think working at Monster Hunters. I came up with this idea for a book that I wanted to find out what paranormal investigation was all about, because I'd seen it on TV and stuff, but hadn't really done any of it myself. So I traveled around and had a lot of great experiences. You know, I went to a UFO conference in Arizona. I went to the Cryptozoology Museum in Maine.
Right. You're going to something on Saturday too, right?
Oh yeah, I'm going to a UFO fest on Saturday here in Wisconsin, in a small town called Dundee.
Okay.
So it's an annual event they had because there was a UFO sighting there. But I had this chance to travel around and meet cryptozoologists, and like I mentioned, the local ghost hunting team, I ended up doing like 12 different investigations with them. And I just got to experience it and write about what these people's lives were like. And I try to get a good mix of people that I think are credible,
right,
and people who are maybe trying to run a scam of some sort or something like that.
No, I think there are people that legitimately have seen stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not it's proven or not, like, I don't necessarily think people that are into those things or stories are crazy, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I've heard lots of things from people that live very normal, you know, rational lives, and maybe they think they've seen something, maybe it was something. I'm not going to shut it down. But
there's an interesting mix of people involved in this type of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
You meet all sorts of different types of people with different motivations to be involved.
Right. No, and I definitely am going to dive into your book as soon as I leave Milwaukee, which is in a few hours. But thank you so much for letting me interview you on my first short, I don't know what this is, but just a short clip. I think you are far more interesting than I am, but I'm so glad that we met and we connected and we get to share a little bit more about you and your writing and your experiences.
Oh, I am too. And if people want to check out more of my stuff, tkrulos.com.
Okay.
I got information about my books and everything else.
Yeah, definitely. I'll link it. And then, like I said, there's a few people that I wanted to definitely connect with your books that I had in mind. So I'm going to share that.
Oh, awesome. It's so much fun talking to you.
Thanks.